What's up guys, my name is Arina and welcome back to my channel where I review everything tech. In today's video, let's compare the cameras of these two OnePlus models, the OnePlus 70 Pro McLaren edition and the newly released OnePlus 8. When it comes to camera specs, both of these phones have 48 megapixel main cameras and 16 megapixel ultra-wide-angle cameras. The 70 Pro McLaren has the advantage of having a dedicated 8 megapixel telephoto camera, but we'll see how this actually translates when it comes to the real-world pictures. Both of these phones have the macro mode on their cameras. The OnePlus 8 has a dedicated 2 megapixel macro camera, while the 70 Pro McLaren uses its ultra-wide-angle camera for taking macro photos. So in this video, we'll take a look at some daylight photos, night shots, wide-angle photos, portraits, and so much more. And at the end of this video, I'll test the side-by-side video quality and stabilization. Let's start with the photos taken in the portrait mode. So here, the McLaren used its telephoto camera to take a portrait, while the OnePlus 8 used its main camera with a digital zoom. I've noticed that the portraits from the 70 Pro always turn out to be more saturated than the ones from the OnePlus 8, and this is up to preference, guys. And when it comes to the separation from the background, I would say it's equally good in both shots. Let's look at the next two portraits. Here I changed the angle of the camera so the photos would be intentionally backlit. These portraits look absolutely different, not only when it comes to colors, but also the overall quality of these shots. As you can see, the photo from the OnePlus 8 looks pretty sharp here, while the 70 Pro McLaren produced a somewhat soft portrait. However, the separation from the background is still pretty good in both of these shots. And let's look at the last couple of portraits. The photo from the 70 Pro looks slightly brighter here and once again more saturated than the shot from the OnePlus 8. So overall, it was interesting to see noticeable differences between portrait modes on these two phones, but let's look at some random daylight photos and you can judge them for yourself. Now let's see how these two phones compare when it comes to zoomed photos, and let's start with some 3x zoom shots. A quick reminder for you guys, for this type of photos, the OnePlus 8 uses its main camera with the digital zoom, while the 70 Pro has the optical zoom, so it uses its dedicated telephoto camera. And let's take a closer look here. As you can see, this shot from the 70 Pro looks obviously sharper than the one from the OnePlus 8. Also, it's hard not to notice a pretty dramatic difference in colors between these two photos. And let's look at the next examples. Let's make this test a little bit more challenging and look at these 10x zoom photos. And yes, this is the max zoom for both of these phones. Well, as expected, the optical zoom rocks, so the difference in quality is dramatic here. I'm not sure you'll ever need the 10x zoom, but once again, this is a test. Now let's switch gears and talk about the front-facing cameras of these phones. We have a 16 megapixel camera on the OnePlus 8 as well as on the 70 Pro McLaren, and let's look at some selfies. Let's test the sound quality and the video quality of these selfie cameras. So this is the sound from the OnePlus 70 Pro McLaren. And now I'm switching to the OnePlus 8. So this is the sound from the OnePlus 8. What do you think, guys? Let's not forget that these phones have the ultra wide angle cameras, so let's look at some wide angle photos. And also, I was really curious to compare the macro modes on these two phones. From my experience, I cannot say the macro mode is reliable on the OnePlus 8. I could easily take a macro shot with my 70 Pro McLaren, while my OnePlus 8 would always seem to struggle with focusing. So when taking a picture, I would have to keep the OnePlus 8 farther from the subject than the 70 Pro. And even so, as you can see, the photo from the OnePlus 8 looks much softer than the one from the 70 Pro. Okay, moving on to my favorite category, the night shots. So, all of these photos were taken in a night mode. The photo from the 70 Pro looks more contrasty and slightly darker than the one from the OnePlus 8, and I would say this is pretty much the pattern here. Let's take a closer look at these night shots, and I would say they're quite similar when it comes to sharpness. And a few more night photos for you guys. Next, let's talk about the videos, and as always, let's start with a stabilization test. All the videos in this camera comparison were shot handheld, and let's look at these 4K videos shot at 60 frames per second. As you can see, there are some steps in front of me, so this stabilization test is gonna be even more challenging. And I think it's pretty obvious that the OnePlus 8 is the winner here when it comes to stabilization. And let's look at these 4K videos shot at 30 frames per second. Oftentimes, the amount of frames per second affects the video stabilization, but it looks like in this comparison, this is not the case. When I look at the video from the OnePlus 8, it seems like there were no steps at all. The video looks really smooth. And now, let's look at some random daylight videos and you can judge them for yourself. And a few night videos for you guys. That's all for this video, guys. Let me know in the comments which camera's performance you like better and why. If you ask me, I'm kinda on the fence because in some categories like videos and portraits, I really liked how the OnePlus 8 did it, but when it comes to zoomed photos and selfies, I prefer the 70 Pro McLaren. And speaking of the random daylight photos, I personally didn't see much difference between these cameras. Thank you so much for watching this video and see you in the next one.